Well, of course, my technical difficulties happened 3 minutes after I left the meeting, and everything works now. Who knows? Anyway, so what I want to do is go ahead and paint everything that is mid-tone or gray, and everything that is black, I'm going to paint gray. I'm going to paint a mid-tone. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to paint, I'm going to paint this whole area, and I want to make sure I have a fairly good puddle of paint once again. I'm going to paint this whole area mid-tone. And I see this I see the sky going through, but I see this canyon going on up through there, and I'll explain that when we get to it. There is my horizon line. And so I am painting everything that is either dark or mid-tone. I'm painting mid-tone. I'm going to leave white. I'm going to leave white paper where it's light. And so I see I have a little thing on this rock, a little highlight, maybe another thing coming down, but I want to paint this large shape. And that's coming down through there and over to there, and I'm going to paint all of this. Mid-tone. I'll paint this mid-tone and that little guy, and some rocks that are happening up in this area, just to make this look like a stream. And the big deal for me is I'm going to make this S-curve, this Z flow through here, and that's going to be that river coming through. So there's another little thing, and I have some more light up here, and that's going to go down and wrap around. And so already I can see a landscape forming out of this. It's a pretty cool way to paint. And I also see with these shapes, I'm going to see some suggestion of this water. And I do have a little rock or something. In fact, I think I'm going to just bring that up into that. Yep. So now I have this S-curve. I have it, well, I actually have double. I'm starting here, and I'm going down and then back, so that's my Z, and that's enough. So now I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to add my darks, and you'll see how everything is just going to magically appear. Okay, that's all dry now. So now I have a dry mid-tone. That's pretty good value, actually. I think it's going to be between the dark and the light. So that's pretty good. Sometimes I luck out with that mid-tone value. Usually it ends up too dark, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to add my darks now, speaking of darks. So I see I have a bunch, and I could do this any way I want. I'm designing as I'm painting. I'm following my reference, but I'm not copying it. I'm changing up on it. So there goes some dark, and I'll try to change this light a little bit so you can kind of see it a little bit better. And I want to keep that highlight on that rock. And I'm going to start putting in these. Oh, look at that beautiful little pine tree right there. Always amazes me, the brush, what you can do with the brush. Anyway, I want to emphasize this back here. I'll show you in a second. I want this wedge right here to be distant hills. So I'm going to do this, make this side dark, and add some whatever. I'm going to make this side fairly dark all over. Could make put a little texture in there, but now this gives me an opening here just by doing that little value change that otherwise I wouldn't have if I'd followed this reference too closely and I didn't create something as opposed to copy something. Anyway, so I think that's a pretty good start on those those big dominant shapes. And I'm going to try to keep this just dark. I'm not going to try to paint any little values or anything going on in here. There's some distant rocks, and I want to keep this opening going on here. And put a little dark in here for that. And a little more dark where that water is starting to run through there. And so now I'm starting to build my painting through that initial design that we did using those big shapes. And I'm going to start building these rocks. And again, I'm not doing a painting, I'm doing a study. So don't get crazy with trying to do too much. I just want to see some of those rocks. And I'm leaving little areas around them, so connect that a little bit. So I can see some highlight transitions. I'm going to leave the top of that rock kind of gradate down and leave another little something happen here. I'm going to leave this happen. I want this to be dark through here because that's going to emphasize, that's going to draw your eye to this part of the water where it starts to cascade over. And again, I'm leaving a little bit of this tone on top to make that transition to the white. And there is a little bit of something happening here, so I'll just put that in for that. And I want to just indicate something there. I don't want a whole lot going on And then I want to see, do I see this, my major reason for doing this, do I see that Z, that Z S curve, if you will, whatever. I'm going to change this slightly. I'm going to make this a little more sweepy. Make that a little more sweepy because I want this to turn and go this way. So that's enough. And I think that's pretty good. I think we've done what we've intended to do. I'm going to kill this a little bit because I don't want you looking up there. And I'm going to bridge the sky just a little bit. Get rid of a little bit of that. But overall, I think this actually works pretty well. I am going to darken that a tad because I don't want you to look at that contrast. I'd rather have it come from over here. And in fact, actually, I'm going to leave that alone. I want this to kind of connect a little bit here and maybe up there. And it's a little better. And I think we're there. Judging based on this, that's a pretty good solution for using this as a start. Okay, this has had time to dry, and I think it's pretty much what I want to do with this. I think that the shapes are pretty good, and I think it's simple enough that I can actually start. I don't know if I drew this for you before, but I'm going to draw it again. There's my horizon line. After I have my boundaries, first thing I do, I'm going to cut out this wedge here, which is up in here. And there's a little canyon mountain behind that. I know this is going to be some trees. I have a rock coming down through here. And that is leading me to this rock, in this shape. I want to leave that white, this part back here. And I see that I have some other rocks coming in from the side, this whole thing, but it's a big, it's kind of a big wedge. So that's going to go off to the side, and this is going to be my, one of my high degree of contrast areas because I want that to stand out. I changed this bottom part because I wanted this to make a curve and flow off to the right. So I'm just going to indicate something there as I'm going to indicate this rock going across here, but I'm simplifying everything. I see this little chute coming down here, so I'm going to leave that. I'm going to make that a rock, and this is a little more of a opening for the water to come down. And then I have some rocks in the back. I'm going to emphasize this a little bit more so you can see it. And there's going to be my horizon line coming through there. And some other little rocks happening and some trees. I'm decided to make this in the North Woods. So it's going to be pine trees probably. And then I have this rock, this main rock coming down here, and a little bit of a sweep and water flowing. And some of this water will be spilling over, and that's kind of where that ends. And I think we've got enough for the drawing part of this. We don't really need much more. We need those foundational elements, those shapes. And I want this shape to be above the horizon line. So the first thing I do after I do this, I'll reiterate, once I have my boundaries, I do my horizon line, which is here. Rule of thirds, third, 2/3. I'm going to figure out my light source, which I think is kind of backlit up this canyon, so I'm putting it up here. There's kind of not much of one, but anyway, so that's gonna take care of that, and that's more than enough to paint from. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did previously for the my value study. I'm going to follow my value study. I'm going to paint the color first, and that's going to be my midtone. Every color has a value. It's not about the color, it's about the value of the color. So I think I am going to decide what time of day, well, I already know for my light source, kind of, sort of, what season it happens to be, and what else is going on. And I'm going to make this a high key kind of painting. So I'm going to do that. And that's going to give me a little glint off of some of these rocks going on in here. And that might be a good combination with the other colors that I choose. So I know I'm already using this warm kind of color, and I'm going to let that blend into, I'm going to use some alizarin and let that kind of, I'm going to just see what happens here. I'm going to use that alizarin, and I'm going to start shaping some of my things, and I'm going to keep that glow. I'm going to try to keep that glow from happening, or actually help it happen. So I kind of like that hot spot coming through here, and I'm going to have to pick that color up. So I am. I'm going to start shaping some of this, these rocks down here using this warmer color before I start using the cool. Because again, I'm painting these shapes because I'm following my value study. And the shapes are pretty much the same, and I'm painting those as my part of my midtone. And I know I'm going to have, just to remind myself, I know I'm going to have a contrast going on right through there. So what else could we do with that? Let's start adding a little purple. Okay, let's continue. Sorry. Okay, let's continue. Sorry about that. I had to take a phone call with my camera here. Anyway, I'm kind of sorry I gave it a chance to dry out, but we'll just go see what happens. I know I'm painting my mid-tone right now based on my value study. And I know that all this color in here has a value to it. So that's what I'm after. Once again, it's not about the color, it's about the value of that color. And I want to paint along this area. And I still want to try to leave this kind of blown out, if you will, with that light. Oh, that's kind of cool. Leave that be another rock back there or something happening along this shoreline and along this shoreline. So I think that is starting to look like it has some light happening. It's kind of cool. Anyway, I'm not ready for my darks yet, so I'll quit putzing. I'm going to continue keeping this really simple with my color palette. I'm just going from warm. I'm going to add some blue later on, so then we'll have the primary colors nailed, I think. I just want to put in some of these big shapes, and I want to let that's the reason I was kind of sorry that the phone rang, is because I wanted some of this color to mix and granulate. So we'll just do the best we can with that. And once again, I'm just painting some value. I like to think of it as value because that's basically what it is. This purple kind of color right here has a value to it, and that's what I'm after. And a little bit happening over here, and I think to emphasize that, I'm going to kind of do that, and I'm going to just to take the some of the tone off of that and to increase that light happening in there. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. I want that light to make a shaft coming down through there, kind of sort of. A little bit of stuff happening there. I'm kind of following, once again, I'm kind of following my value study. I want to keep it that simple, and I want all this color to kind of mix together. And again, I'm working the values. I know I want this to be fairly dark through here. It's going to be fairly dark because I want that to show off. Where that starts happening with the water. And I think that, I'm going to make this just a little darker up here. Yeah, that's fine. Get fussy. I think that shows where I want this painting to go. I am going to just use a hint of this while I'm doing it. This is coming down here, so I'm just going to use a hint of this because it's going to emphasize that shaft of light coming down. And also down here. I think that'll work. So, oops, sorry about that. I think that will be more than enough. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to emphasize that. Then we'll use some cool color in there and start putting in some of our darks. Now we're back on track. So I've done the same thing that I did in this top one, this value study. Everything that's gray was my mid-tone, my color. So I painted a lot of mid-tone color in the palette where, I don't know, I've chosen. So it's a pretty kind of a bulletproof palette. I am going to, because I had to pause that, I am going to use my mister, and I'm going to re-wet that part just a little bit because I want some orange glow in there. I think that kind of makes it a little bit more dramatic, if you will. Anyway, I kind of like that. And so I'm going to leave that as my white. In fact, what I think I'll leave it alone. Sorry, talking to myself. Highly usual. I'm just going to put that through there for now. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use kind of a cobalt blue for my water. And I don't have to use a lot of it because I've already, a lot of this stays light in tone. I am going to put a little hint of that through here and through here, just so you know. That's where the water is supposed to be. Kill that. And let's see how this works. That's light on top, so that's going to have a little bit of a, where it goes over the edge and out of the light. And I think I'm just going to do a little bit of that. Dry brush in that water that's coming in. And I know that this and this part right here is going to be a little bit out of the light. And I don't mind that turning green at all. In fact, that kind of helps me with the look of the water. I am going to try to do a little bit of that for that falling water. And this is the bottom part is where it's going to get bubbly right through here. And then it's going to get lighter on down through here, a little bit along this edge, and I'm going to cool that off. And then a little going down the stream. That's going to be a little bit more in shadow. Yeah, that'll work. Make some drama out of that. And I think I'm going to use that cobalt to kill some of these hot spots through here, because they're getting too, it's getting to be a little bit too much. I want to concentrate on this area going down. And now I can start adding some darks. So this is always the kind of the fun part for me, is adding the darks to this. So I'm looking at this on the monitor, and it seems to be kind of shaping up. Okay, so I'm going to use my dark, plus I'm going to add some. I'm going to add a little bit of the ultramarine to it. I'm going to make it more of a Payne's in my palette, at least to start with. So I'm going to make all this dark, and I can leave a little bit of stuff happening if I want to. I don't have to make it. I just want to make enough to make it interesting. So, and there's a few little rocks, bumps on that shore over there. And I think I'm going to start adding a few little trees back here, and especially in here. Just indications. That's kind of all I'm after, is just an indication of something happening. And the same on this side. Where that leave something to the imagination. It's kind of interesting. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that. And I'm still going to kind of stay with the cool on that dark, I think. And I do want to keep this simple. See, to me, this is the absolutely the best part of painting. I get to add these darks in there and make everything work, at least for me. It doesn't work for anybody else, to heck with them. So all I can do is please me. This is one of my darker areas right through there. And then I can just simplify this. And in no time, we kind of have something that kind of sort of looks like this mountain, river, stream, whatever you want to call it. And I am doing this as a study. You can see the size of this. It's not very big. I'm doing this as a study. So if I want to do something later on down the road as something that I want to make bigger, I can certainly do that. And I think we're getting pretty close to, there's lots of stuff you can do in here. You can go back and scrape rocks. You can do all kinds of stuff, but I'm not really going to do that because I want to keep this simple. I don't want to get too expressive. When I said that, I meant this. So I could go back and I could scrape some rock texture in there. I could do the same thing on this side. It might be a little dry now, but you can see how easily you can go back and scrape. And I could have put a few little trees in there. But that's for the bigger version, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to blot that because I want it to be drier because I want this edge painted that quickly, and I wanted that edge to be sharper right there. Anyway, you can kind of get the idea of what we're doing. There's kind of a little reflection of that guy. And I think I'm going to cool this off a little bit down in here and let this part be more sparkly. In fact, I'm going to kill that part a little bit. And then we can take it off, take the tape off and see what we have. Yay. I always like taking the tape off. Usually. Sometimes. Now we'll see what we have. Anyway, I spent a little more time on this, but I didn't paint this too much differently than what I painted at the top, and that's all you need to do. That's enough for a study for this. So I hope you can see how that relates to that. This told me, this gave me information. This is how I interpreted it, breaking it down into shapes, 4 to 6 major shapes, maybe. And then that told me how to do this. And that's the result of, in fact, now that I see this, I want to let this dry. But if this is my big deal, I might want to go back and I might want to just kill this down here a little bit. Because I want this to be the most contrast and the brightest color, and then say, oh, wow, look up that canyon. It's kind of cool. So that's about it.